There comes a point in every parent's life where you sit quietly with your memories and wonder, should I finally tell them everything? Maybe your kids are grown now. Maybe they've become parents themselves. You think, they're mature enough. They'll understand. But friend, let me tell you something hard and important. Some truths are not meant to be spoken. Not because they're shameful, not because they're lies, but because being a parent isn't just about telling the truth. It's about protecting hearts. It's about knowing which truths you land, which ones wound. You see, as we age, there's a deep temptation to unload, to confess, to feel seen. But too often, what we call honesty is really a request. A request for our children to carry our emotional weight, to hold our regret, to validate our pain, but that's not their burden to carry. They didn't ask for that baggage, and it can quietly crush their sense of self. It can twist their childhood memories. It can make them question, was it all real? I've spoken with families torn apart by one late-night confession that couldn't be taken back. So ask yourself, does this truth bring healing or harm? Being a wise parent doesn't end at 18. Sometimes, the greatest love we can show is silence, not to hide, but to protect. Because real strength is knowing what not to say. There's one sentence no child, no matter how old, should ever have to hear. I wish I'd waited. I could have done more with my life if I hadn't had you. Maybe you didn't mean it like that. Maybe it slipped out in a moment of nostalgia or frustration. But here's the hard truth. Children don't hear your context. They don't hear the what-ifs or the it's not your fault. They hear one thing: you were a mistake. Even at 45, even as parents themselves, your children still want to believe they were wanted. That their arrival added joy to your life, not stole it. They need to know they mattered. I've sat with adults who've carried the weight of that one comment their entire lives. They don't remember your tone. They remember the wound. And some never fully heal from it. Maybe you had dreams that had to be delayed. Maybe life didn't turn out how you planned. But your children are not to blame for the timing of life. They're not the reason something didn't happen. They're the reason something beautiful did. So before you speak, ask yourself, does this truth lift my child, or does it break something sacred? Because real love isn't just about being honest. It's about being careful with the hearts that still see you as their home. Let me say something that might be hard to hear, but it's necessary. If you ever betrayed your spouse, if you had an affair, if you lived a double life for a season, don't tell your children. Not even when they're adults. Not even when you think they're old enough to understand. Because what you're really doing, whether you see it or not, is handing them a burden they were never meant to carry. You're turning your son or daughter into a confessor, into your judge, into your emotional crutch. You're asking them to help you make peace with your past, but that's not their role. I've seen this happen in real life. A father confessed to his adult daughter about his infidelity from decades ago. He thought it would bring them closer. Instead, she stopped calling. She couldn't look at family photos the same way. She started asking herself, was my childhood a lie? Were our family vacations just a cover-up? When you confess in that way, you aren't freeing them, you're wounding them. Healing is personal. If you want forgiveness, start with yourself. Start with your spouse, start with God, but leave your child out of that process. Let their memories remain whole. Let their love for you be untainted. Because true strength isn't in telling everything. It's in knowing what should stay unsaid, out of love. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been tempted to share the story of your one true love who wasn't your child's other parent? Maybe it felt romantic. Maybe it seemed harmless. But I want to stop you right there, because this is one of the most damaging confessions a parent can make. When you tell your child, before I met your mom, there was someone I loved more, or your dad was never really my soulmate. You're not just sharing a memory, you're rewriting their origin story. Suddenly, everything they thought was solid becomes shaky. Was I the result of a compromise? Was our family just plan B? If dad wasn't your deepest love, then what does that make me? You see, children, no matter how old, form their identity from the story of how they came to be. And when that story is tarnished with the idea that someone else should have been, it creates a crack deep inside their sense of belonging. You may think you're just being honest, but sometimes honesty is a mask for something else, a need to be heard, to be validated, to romanticize the past. If you're carrying memories of a love that never was, that's your story to hold. Not your child's to carry. Protect the foundation they stand on. Let them believe their family began in love even if imperfect. Because love isn't about what could have been. It's about what you chose and continued choosing day after day. Let me ask you something personal. Have you ever felt tempted to open up to your child about your deepest emotional struggles, your depression, your anxiety, your moments of despair? We live in a time where vulnerability is celebrated, and that's a beautiful thing when it comes from a place of healing. But here's the hard truth. When you share your emotional pain before you've made peace with it, you're not offering vulnerability, you're passing on a burden. Your child, no matter how old, will instinctively try to hold your pain. They might smile, listen, even comfort you, but inside, they're panicking. They're wondering, if mom feels like this, who's going to hold me when I'm not okay? They may start to carry guilt, feeling they should have done more, even if it happened 20 years ago. Or worse, they pull away, not out of coldness, but out of emotional survival. Children are not built to be their parents' emotional therapists. They need to feel that you are okay, or at least working toward okay, so yes, share your struggles, but only when you've processed them, grown from them, and can speak from the other side. Let your story be a light, not a weight. Remember, being honest doesn't always mean saying everything. Sometimes, the most loving thing we can do is to carry our pain until we've turned it. Let me ask you something quietly personal. Have you ever found yourself saying, even half-jokingly, your brother was always the responsible one, or your sister was the gifted child? It seems harmless, maybe even true, but to a child, those words are not casual. They're concrete, permanent. They don't hear just teasing. They hear, you weren't enough. You see, children shape their sense of self based on the words we speak, especially from those they love and look up to most. Even as adults, many carry silent scars from being the overlooked one. They question their worth, they work twice as hard to be seen. Or worse, they withdraw quietly, deciding that no matter what they do, they'll never be the favorite. Favoritism, even when unintentional, chips away at emotional fairness. And without fairness, love can start to feel like something that needs to be earned, instead of something that's simply given. Now, here's the truth. It's human to connect more easily with one child over another. Personalities differ. Life stages affect relationships. But love must never feel ranked. So if you're a parent reflecting on past words or patterns, it's not too late. Apologize if you must. Reaffirm their worth clearly and often. Because what every child, no matter how grown, longs to believe is that they were never in competition for your heart. Let's make sure they know your love wasn't divided, it was always whole. Let's talk about a phrase that's said too casually. If I hadn't had kids, maybe I wouldn't be struggling financially. Maybe you've heard someone say it. Maybe you've even said it yourself in a moment of frustration. But here's the truth. Children don't hear the context. They hear the blame, and that blame becomes a quiet burden they carry for years, sometimes for life. You see, when we link our financial pain to their existence, even indirectly, what we're really telling them is, you are the reason I couldn't have more. And that cuts deeper than we realize. Yes, parenting is hard. Yes, life is expensive. And yes, many of us sacrifice dreams, opportunities, and comforts for the sake of our children. But love doesn't itemize those sacrifices, and children should never feel like a financial accident. Instead of resentment, we can model resilience. Instead of guilt, we can teach gratitude. Talk to them about budgeting, about working hard, about bouncing back after setbacks, but never in a way that makes them feel like your dreams died because they were born. Our role as parents isn't to make our children carry our burdens. It's to give them wings even if it costs us everything. And when they grow up, they won't remember the brand of shoes you couldn't buy them. They'll remember how you made them feel, loved, safe, and never a mistake. So, if there are truths too heavy for your child to carry, what should you do with them? Write them in a journal, speak them in prayer. Bring them to a therapist or a trusted friend. But don't hand them to your son or daughter like they're emotionally equipped to sort it out for you. Because they're not. You see, parenting doesn't end the day your child turns 18 or moves out. In fact, a different kind of parenting begins, one that's quieter, deeper, and even more powerful. You're no longer just raising a child. You're modeling what it means to be an emotionally mature adult. You're showing them how to live with dignity, grace, and restraint. Real strength isn't found in telling your children everything you've ever felt or done. Real strength is knowing what not to say. It's choosing to protect their peace over relieving your guilt. It's realizing that some truths, while real, don't need to be passed down like a legacy of pain. You can be honest without being harmful. You can be vulnerable without being unfiltered. And most of all, you can love your children deeply, without making them carry the parts of you that are still healing. That's not dishonesty. That's wisdom. And wisdom, dear friends, is one of the greatest gifts a parent can give. Before you open your heart, before you speak those words that carry decades of weight, pause, just for a moment and ask yourself, will this heal? Or will this harm? Because not every truth needs to be spoken to be valid. Not every wound needs to be transferred to be acknowledged. And not every burden needs to be passed down to be released. You see, the legacy we leave behind isn't just in what we give. It's also in what we choose not to give. The silence we keep when it protects someone we love can be just as sacred as the words we speak. So, if you're a parent, a grandparent, or even just a friend carrying something heavy, this message isn't meant to judge you. It's meant to awaken something in you. Because the world doesn't need more pain disguised as honesty. It needs more people, especially in their later years, who choose wisdom over impulse, peace over chaos, healing over harm. It takes courage to stay quiet when the ego wants to speak. It takes strength to protect others when you still feel broken. But that is what real maturity looks like. That is how we age with grace. And if this message speaks to something deep within you, share it. Send it to a parent, a friend, someone who might need to hear it. And if you'd like more messages like this, gentle, true, and soul-stirring, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Let's grow together. With wisdom, with courage, and with heart.